You don't live in the Middle East. You've never been to Iran or Israel. But the war that started 27 days ago is already changing prices at your gas pump, your grocery store, and your mortgage rate. Here's why a channel you've never heard of controls your life. It's day 27. Missiles are in the air. Ships are burning in the Persian Gulf. Oil prices have crossed $120 a barrel. 2,000 vessels carrying food, fuel, and medicine are stranded in one of the narrowest straits on Earth. And somewhere, deep in a bunker, decisions are being made that could change life on this planet forever. Today, we're going to tell you exactly what's happening, why it matters to you personally, even if you're sitting in Ohio, and what happens if this war goes somewhere no one wants it to go. We're talking missiles. We're talking nuclear weapons. We're talking about a 21-mile wide channel that controls the price of everything you buy. Stay with me, because this one changes things. To understand what's happening right now, you need to understand how modern warfare actually works in 2026. It is nothing like the wars your grandparents remember. There are no front lines. There is no defined battlefield. There are no armies marching toward each other across an open field. Modern war is a web, a network, and it moves at the speed of a missile. Here's what war looks like today. A B-2 stealth bomber, a flying wing so flat it barely appears on radar, takes off from a base in Missouri. It flies 13,000 miles, refuels in the air twice, drops a series of 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs on an underground nuclear facility in Iran, and returns home. The pilots are eating breakfast by the time the news breaks. Simultaneously, a U.S. submarine somewhere in the Indian Ocean fires a Tomahawk cruise missile. That missile flies at 550 miles per hour, just above the treetops, using digital maps to navigate. It hits its target within a 10-foot margin of error from hundreds of miles away. And on the other side, Iran fires a hypersonic missile that travels at Mach 10, 10 times the speed of sound, a mile every half second. And it maneuvers. It doesn't just fall like a rock. It dodges, adjusts, and approaches from unexpected angles. This is the world we're living in. The world where a handful of commanders making decisions in bunkers can move faster than diplomats can pick up a phone. Now let's talk about what happened, blow by blow. February 28th, 2026, 8:38 p.m. in Washington, D.C. President Trump gives the order. Within 6 hours, U.S. warships launch Tomahawk missiles, B-2 stealth bombers pierce Iran's airspace, and HIMARS rocket systems begin firing. Then, 6 minutes after the U.S. starts, the Israeli Air Force launches what they call decapitation strikes. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is killed, along with multiple senior officials gathered in his residential compound. Gone. In under an hour, Iran's entire leadership structure is in chaos. But Iran was ready. They had been preparing for this moment for years. Within hours, Iran launches retaliatory ballistic missiles at Israel, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, and Jordan. They hit a US Navy base, they close the Strait of Hormuz, and they fire their newest, most terrifying weapon, the Fattah 2, in combat for the very first time. Day 1 was just the beginning. Before we go further, you need to understand what these weapons actually are, because there's a massive difference between a rocket and a missile, and an even bigger difference between a regular missile and a hypersonic one. Let's start simple. A ballistic missile is basically a giant guided rocket. You launch it up into the atmosphere, sometimes all the way into space, and then gravity and momentum bring it back down onto its target. Think of throwing a baseball in a perfect arc, except instead of a baseball, it's a 2,000-pound warhead traveling at 4 miles per second. Iran has hundreds of these. The Shahab 3, the Sejil, the Khaybar Shekan. They can hit targets 1,400 to 2,000 kilometers away. That puts Israel, US bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, all of it, well within range. But here's the problem with ballistic missiles. They're predictable. They follow a known physics arc. Radar systems can track them the second they launch. Defense systems like Israel's Arrow 3 can calculate exactly where they're going to land and fire and intercept a missile to destroy them before they arrive. It's like shooting a bullet with another bullet. It sounds impossible, but with modern computers, it works most of the time. That's why hypersonic missiles are such a game changer. A hypersonic missile doesn't follow a predictable arc. It travels at Mach 5 or above, at least 5 times the speed of sound. But more importantly, it maneuvers, it glides, it skips along the edge of the atmosphere, constantly adjusting its path. Iran's Fattah 2, first used in combat on March 1st,
2026 travels at what Iran claims is Mach 15. Even skeptical Western analysts confirm it reaches hypersonic speeds and maneuvers in ways that current defense systems struggle with.
Here's what one Israeli defense executive said about it. Paraphrasing, every air defense system today works by flying faster than the incoming missile. But against a Mach 10 weapon, you'd need a defense moving at Mach 30. That's physically impossible in the atmosphere. Let that sink in. The defense technology literally cannot keep up. Then there are cruise missiles, Iran's other weapon. These fly low and slow, just above the rooftops, using pre-programmed digital maps to navigate around terrain. They're harder to detect on radar because they don't go high. They blend into the ground clutter. And then there are drones. Cheap, expendable. Iran's Shahed drones cost around $20,000 each. They can be launched in swarms, hundreds at once. Not necessarily to destroy their targets, but to exhaust the defense systems that cost $3 million per interceptor missile. You fire 100 cheap drones to drain the defense, then you fire the expensive missiles through the gap. That's the Iranian doctrine. Overwhelm, exhaust, penetrate, and it's been working. So let's talk about Iran. Because most Americans massively underestimate this country's military power. Iran's military is not a conventional force. They can't match the US Air Force. Their fighter jets are aging. F-14s from the 1970s, mostly grounded. They have no aircraft carriers. Their navy is smaller, but Iran built its military around a different strategy. You don't win by matching your enemy's strength. You win by making the cost of fighting you unbearable. This is called asymmetric warfare, and Iran has been studying it for 40 years. Here's Iran's actual power. Number one, the missile program. Before this war started, the US Central Command estimated Iran had over 3,000 ballistic missiles, the largest arsenal in the Middle East by far. Even after the June 2025 war and the current war's destruction, Iran reportedly still has around 1,500 missiles and 200 launchers. These missiles are stored underground in what Iranian commanders call missile cities. Entire tunnel networks carved into mountains, hardened against airstrikes, capable of launching hundreds of missiles simultaneously. You can bomb the surface. The missiles just come from a different tunnel. Number two, the Strait of Hormuz. This is Iran's most powerful weapon, and it's not even a missile. The Strait of Hormuz is a channel 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. On one side, Iran. On the other side, Oman. And through that 21-mile gap flows 20% of the world's oil, 1/5 of all the petroleum consumed on Earth every single day. Before this war, 130 ships passed through the strait every day. Right now, 6. 6 ships with Iranian permission are allowed through. That's not a blockade, that's a stranglehold. 1/3 of global fertilizer trade goes through that strait. So does 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. 30% of Europe's jet fuel, the urea used to grow American corn. Iran closed one 21-mile channel, and the IEA, the International Energy Agency, called it the greatest global energy and food security challenge in history. Number 3, the proxy network. Even after Hamas was decimated, after Hezbollah was weakened, after the Houthis became isolated, Hezbollah has still fired more than 3,500 missiles at Israel since March 7th. Lebanon is being hit. Israel is fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. Number 4, intelligence and resilience. Iran's leadership pre-distributed command authority before the war started. When Khamenei was killed, the system didn't collapse. Within hours, Iran launched simultaneous retaliatory attacks across multiple fronts without waiting for central authorization. You can't kill an idea. You can't bomb a doctrine. And here's the nuclear question everyone is dancing around.
Before June 2025, Iran had 441 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. Weapons grade is 90%. The gap between 60% and 90% is technically a matter of weeks of centrifuge work. If the centrifuges are running, the US and Israel bombed Natanz. They bombed Fordow. They bombed Isfahan. IAEA Director General Grossi said Iran's enrichment program was significantly set back. Iran's nuclear program is, in his words, very slow, perhaps frozen. But here's what keeps analysts awake at night. Iran still has roughly 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. and no one knows exactly where all of it is. Now let's talk about the other side. Israel is a country the size of New Jersey, population 9 million people. And yet military analysts rank it among the most capable fighting forces on Earth. How is that possible? Because Israel has built its military around one core principle. It cannot afford to lose. Not once. Not ever. A country that small, surrounded by adversaries with nowhere to retreat. Every war is existential. That principle has driven them to build things no one else has. Take the multi-layered air defense system. Most countries have one layer of missile defense. Maybe two. Israel has 4. Iron Dome handles the close-range stuff, the rockets from Gaza and Lebanon, the mortar shells. David's Sling handles medium-range missiles and cruise missiles. Arrow 2 handles longer-range ballistic missiles within the atmosphere. Arrow 3 handles the big ones, the Shahabs and Sejils, outside the atmosphere in space, before they even begin their descent.
It's like having 4 goalies stacked in front of one net. In the current war, this system has been tested harder than at any point in history. Hundreds of Iranian missiles fired. The overwhelming majority intercepted, but not all of them. And that's the brutal math. If Iran fires 170 missiles at once, as it did on March 26, 2026, even a 95% intercept rate means 8 or 9 missiles get through. That's 8 or 9 impacts in a densely populated country the size of New Jersey. But here's what nobody is saying out loud. Israel has nuclear weapons. Israel has never officially confirmed or denied this. It's the world's worst kept secret. The policy is called amimat, deliberate ambiguity, and it has worked as a deterrent for 60 years. Here's what we know from declassified documents, satellite imagery, and the testimony of Mordecai Vanunu, the Israeli nuclear technician, who in 1986 walked into the London Sunday Times and told them everything. The Negev Nuclear Research Center near Dimona has been producing weapons-grade plutonium since the early 1960s. The CIA confirmed in 1976 that Israel had 10 to 20 nuclear weapons. By 2021, the Federation of American Scientists estimated 90 warheads. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute agrees. There's enough fissile material stockpiled for up to 200. These can be launched from land, from fighter jets, and from submarines. 6 Dolphin-class submarines quietly patrol the world's oceans, each believed capable of firing nuclear-tipped cruise missiles. This is the second strike capability. Even if Israel itself were destroyed, those submarines remain, and they will respond. This is what Israeli strategists call the Samson Option. The name comes from the Bible. Samson, blinded and captured by his enemies, pushes apart the pillars of their temple and brings the whole building down on everyone, himself included.
The message is simple. You can kill us, but we will take you with us. An Israeli politician once put it more directly. We possess several hundred atomic warheads. We have the capability to take the world down with us. And I can assure you that will happen before Israel goes under. In March 2026, Iranian missiles struck near Dimona. Not the facility itself, nearby towns. But that sent a message. And the Samson Option, once discussed only in academic journals, is now being analyzed in emergency sessions of every major government on Earth. So what actually is a nuclear weapon? How does it work? And why is it so different from every other weapon ever made? Let me explain this simply. Everything in the universe is made of atoms. At the center of every atom is a nucleus. That nucleus holds an enormous amount of energy, the energy that holds it together. A nuclear weapon releases that energy all at once, not gradually, not over time, all at once. There are 2 basic types. A fission bomb, like the ones dropped on Japan, splits heavy atoms like uranium or plutonium. The nucleus breaks apart, releases energy, which splits more nuclei, which releases more energy in a chain reaction that happens in millionths of a second. A fusion bomb, a hydrogen bomb, does the opposite. It fuses light atoms together under extreme heat and pressure, releasing even more energy. Modern strategic warheads combine both processes.
The Hiroshima bomb, Little Boy, had a yield of 15 kilotons. That means it released the energy equivalent of 15,000 tons of TNT. Imagine every conventional bomb dropped by every air force in the entire Second World War, compressed into a single flash lasting less than a second. 15 kilotons killed between 90,000 and 166,000 people in one city in one morning. The average modern strategic warhead is 200 to 300 kilotons. That's 13 to 20 times more powerful than Hiroshima. Russia's largest tested bomb, the Tsar Bomba, had a yield of 50 megatons. That's 50 million tons of TNT, 3,000 times Hiroshima. The fireball alone was 8 kilometers wide. The mushroom cloud rose 67 kilometers into the atmosphere. Windows shattered 900 kilometers away, and we made dozens of those. When a nuclear weapon detonates over a city, the sequence of destruction is, first, the fireball. Temperatures at ground zero reach 100 million degrees Celsius, hotter than the core of the sun. Everything within a certain radius is simply vaporized, not burned, vaporized, turned into gas. Second, the blast wave. A wall of compressed air expands outward at supersonic speed. It flattens everything in its path. Buildings collapse, trees snap, the overpressure crushes lungs from the inside. Third, the thermal pulse. A burst of heat radiation that ignites fires across a vast area. Firestorms that burn for days, consuming oxygen, creating hurricane-force winds that pull survivors into the flames. Fourth, the radiation. Invisible, silent. It penetrates walls, penetrates bodies, destroys DNA at the cellular level. It doesn't kill immediately. It kills over days and weeks as organs fail, as the immune system collapses, as the body simply stops being able to maintain itself. And fifth, the fallout. Radioactive particles carried by wind, landing on crops, contaminating water supplies, silently irradiating populations hundreds of miles from the explosion. Hiroshima was a 15 kiloton bomb. Israel has 90 warheads, estimated at 20 kilotons each or larger. Russia has 6,200 nuclear weapons. The United States has 5,500. There is no adequate medical response to a nuclear detonation. There is no hospital system that can handle it. There is no fire department that can contain it. There is no supply chain that survives it. August 6th, 1945. 8:15 in the morning, the city of Hiroshima is waking up. People are going to work. Children are going to school. A mother is making breakfast. The B-29 bomber Enola Gay has been flying for hours. At 31,000 feet above the city, the bomb bay opens. 43 seconds later, Little Boy detonates 1,900 feet above Hiroshima. In those 43 seconds, the world changes forever. 70,000 people are killed instantly, not from fire, not from the blast. They are simply erased, vaporized by a heat so intense that some of them left only shadows burned into the walls behind them. A permanent silhouette where a human being used to stand. Those who survived the initial blast are hit by a shockwave traveling at 1,000 miles per hour. It levels every structure within a mile of ground zero. Then come the fires. Of the 76,000 buildings in Hiroshima, 92% are destroyed. People who were kilometers away begin to lose their hair. Their skin peels. They vomit blood. Their gums bleed. They don't understand why. They don't know about radiation. By the end of 1945, between 90,000 and 166,000 people are dead. 3 days later, it happens again. Nagasaki, Fat Man. Another 60,000 to 80,000 dead. In less than a week, the United States killed 250,000 human beings using 2 weapons, and those were the smallest nuclear weapons ever deployed in combat. Today, there are approximately 12,500 nuclear warheads on Earth. Most of them are orders of magnitude more powerful than Little Boy. For 80 years, not one of them has been used in war. For 80 years, the unthinkable has remained unthinkable. But the conditions that kept that line uncrossed, stable deterrence, functioning diplomacy, predictable state behavior, are under more pressure right now than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's walk through the realistic escalation scenarios. Not fear-mongering, not fantasy. The actual scenarios that military planners and intelligence agencies are modeling right now. Scenario 1, controlled escalation. Where we are now, day 27. The US and Israel are destroying Iran's military infrastructure. Talks are proceeding through Pakistan. Iran is responding with missile barrages but has not yet targeted US aircraft carriers directly or struck at Saudi oil facilities in a way that destroys them. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed.
Oil is at $120 a barrel. The global economy is contracting, but both sides are still leaving off-ramps open. This ends with a negotiated ceasefire, and the world pays a steep economic price for several quarters. Painful, not catastrophic. Scenario 2, Karg Island.
Trump is reportedly considering seizing Karg Island, Iran's main oil export terminal in the Persian Gulf. If U.S. forces land on Iranian soil, that crosses a threshold that transforms this from an air war into an occupation. Iran's parliament is already drafting laws to formalize strait fees. Iran has warned it will mine all Gulf sea lanes if its islands are attacked. A U.S. amphibious operation against Karg Island would almost certainly trigger the largest mine-laying operation in the Persian Gulf since the 1980s, cutting off not just Iran's oil, but Kuwait's, Iraq's, Saudi Arabia's. 20% of global oil supply severed. Goldman Sachs economists are already projecting a 25% chance of U.S. recession from the current disruption. If oil hits $140 per barrel for 2 months, Oxford economics models project the Eurozone, UK, and Japan all enter contraction simultaneously. That is a global recession. Scenario 3, miscalculation.
Russia is reportedly providing intelligence to Iran to target U.S. personnel. The EU has publicly stated this. One miscalculated missile strikes a U.S. carrier or kills a significant number of American service members. The political pressure in Washington becomes irresistible. The U.S. escalates to direct targeting of Iranian oil infrastructure. Iran's Defense Council has explicitly stated any attack on Iranian oil infrastructure triggers mine laying across all Gulf sea lanes. That's not a threat. That's a pre-announced doctrine. And then there's the scenario no one wants to name directly. Scenario 4, nuclear. Iran does not currently have a functional nuclear weapon. Post-June 2025 strikes, their enrichment program is severely degraded, but they have 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, and they have been actively rebuilding since February 2026.
Israel believes, based on assessments from the Institute for Science and International Security, that Iran was within months of a non-missile deliverable nuclear device before the June 2025 strikes. That capability is set back, not eliminated. If Israel believes Iran has crossed a certain threshold, if there's even ambiguous intelligence of a nuclear test or imminent weaponization, the Samson option becomes something generals discuss in real operational terms, not just in academic papers. And once a nuclear weapon is used, even a small one, the entire global deterrence architecture that has kept the peace since 1945 collapses. Every nuclear power reassesses. Every threshold drops. That is the scenario that keeps the directors of the CIA, MI6, Mossad, and every major intelligence agency awake every single night. Let's be clear about one thing. There is no version of a nuclear exchange in the Middle East that stays in the Middle East. Here's the science. A 2022 study published in the journal Nature Food, conducted by researchers at Rutgers University, modeled what happens to the global food supply after a limited nuclear exchange. Not World War III, not the US versus Russia, just India and Pakistan trading 100 Hiroshima-sized bombs. Their conclusion, up to 2 billion people would face starvation within 2 years. Here's why. Nuclear explosions ignite massive fires. Those fires send enormous quantities of soot and smoke into the upper stratosphere, above where weather systems move, above where rain can wash it out. That soot blocks sunlight. Average global temperatures drop by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. That doesn't sound like much, but that's the difference between a normal growing season and widespread crop failure across the northern hemisphere.
China and the United States, and the world's two largest food producers, both see dramatic drops in output. Global food prices triple. Famine spreads first in developing nations, then cascades everywhere. 2 billion people from a limited nuclear exchange between two regional powers. Now imagine a larger exchange. If the US and Russia, which together hold roughly 90% of all nuclear weapons on Earth, engaged in a full-scale exchange, the result would be nuclear winter. Temperatures drop 10 to 15 degrees globally. Photosynthesis effectively stops in large parts of the world. Agriculture collapses. Virtually all complex human civilization is at risk. The ozone layer would be severely depleted, letting lethal ultraviolet radiation reach the surface. Radiation poisoning spreads across entire continents via fallout, carried by wind patterns that respect no borders.
There is no hospital system large enough to treat radiation exposure on that scale. There is no government infrastructure that survives. There is no supply chain that functions. The IPPNW, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, calculated that a full-scale nuclear war could kill 5 to 6 billion people within 2 years. Not in the explosion, in the aftermath, in the starvation, in the radiation, in the collapse of every system we depend on to stay alive. This is what nuclear weapons are. Not just very big bombs. They are civilization-ending tools. And right now, on day 27 of an active war, with a country that has been bombed repeatedly in the last year and possesses 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, and another country with 90 nuclear warheads and a doctrine that explicitly says it will use them if its survival is threatened, we are closer to this conversation being real than we have been in a very long time. Here's where we are. Day 27, a war that started with the assassination of a supreme leader, a 21-mile channel that controls the price of everything you eat, everything you drive, everything you heat your home with, closed. A missile fired in anger is traveling at Mach 10 before it hits the ground. Oil is over $120 a barrel. Talks are happening through Pakistan in secret with 15 conditions no one has publicly agreed to. And somewhere underground in a mountain in Iran, there may or may not be 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. We've spent this video explaining missiles and warheads and yields and megatons and kill radii. And all of that is important. You need to understand the machinery of this. But here's the thing. No technical briefing can answer. Who is in that bunker tonight making the next decision? What are they afraid of? What do they think the other side is about to do? What miscalculation are they one bad intelligence report away from making? In 1983, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov received a warning that the United States had launched 5 nuclear missiles at the Soviet Union. Every protocol told him to report it up the chain. That report would have triggered a Soviet counterstrike. The computers said it was real. Petrov didn't report it. He decided on his own that it was probably a false alarm. He was right. It was a satellite malfunction. We are alive today because of one man's judgment in a moment of pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide. The fate of the global food supply, the price of oil, the retirement accounts of American families, the future of every country that imports energy, all of it threading through 21 miles of water, guarded by missiles that travel faster than the speed of sound, launched by a country whose supreme leader was killed 27 days ago. I don't know how this ends. Nobody does. What I know is that the decisions being made right now, in Washington, in Tel Aviv, in what's left of Tehran's government infrastructure, will determine whether the next chapter of this story is one of painful but manageable recovery, or something that rewrites the human story entirely. The gap between those two outcomes is, at this moment, the width of a negotiating table. Pay attention to what happens next. If this video helped you understand something complex, share it. The people around you deserve to know what's actually happening, and I'll see you in the next one.